Okay, thank you so much for this lovely introduction and for having me here. This is my first time at Fast Forward, and I'm very happy and excited to be here. As Katarzyna mentioned, I am currently a PhD student at the Doctoral School of Humanities at the University of Warsaw, and I am conducting research on professional family photography and the institution of motherhood. But today I will be talking about a project which I realized as curator in 2022. It was an exhibition and a book titled Celina Osiecka, Photography Services. I was able to make that project thanks to the Warsaw Artistic Scholarship in partnership with the Praga Museum of Warsaw, which is a branch of Museum of Warsaw. I know that a couple of people here have visited that museum earlier this week. So, and I know that some of the museum's current employees are here. So yeah, hi. Okay, so without further ado, or actually before I delve into Celina Osiecka, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background and to show you the path that led me to this project. Because apart from being a researcher, sometimes a curator, I am mainly a practicing artist, and my work is a lot of my work has the traits of artistic research. And so in 2016, I created a project titled Fotograf Warszawski, that's translated into photography studios. And this project was focused on consumer photography and on the history of Warsaw, or not really the history, the present of Warsaw photography studios, because the project consisted in visiting all of the active photography studios that were functioning in Warsaw back in 2016. And from the very beginning, when I started working with photography, it seemed very important to me to embrace the fact that consumer photography is a huge part of what photography as a medium is, and it was important to me as an artist to embrace that and also try to understand what that means for the medium when it is used as fine art. And so this was an early project, and this was my way of getting in contact with professional photography. So the project consisted of documenting, first of all, mapping all of the functioning studios, and then documenting the shop the shop windows, the vitrines of the studios. And this was done because it was really fascinating to me that photography has its place in the urban landscape, that it has this physical presence. And I thought that this was something that was true back in 2016, but might not be true for the future generations. And I felt that it was important to preserve the memory of these places within the context of my city. And I guess this intuition was quite, accurate, because this is a picture of the same spot merely 4 years later. Obviously, with the pandemic, a lot of the photography studios shut down, which was already a process which was taking place earlier, but this just accelerated. And this is a map that I made together with graphic designer Martyna Wyrzykowska, and it's a linear map of Warsaw. The crack in the middle is the Vistula River, which cuts the city in half, and it represents the 102 photography studios that I was able to identify back in 2016. And what's important to me is to show how the distribution of these studios is represents, how the different areas of Warsaw are active in the photography field. You can see that in the center of the city, there's definitely more studios than in the more peripheral areas. And another part of this project was actually commissioning portraits in each of the studios. What I commissioned so-called diploma photos. So they were the photos that were the least standardized, and they allowed the photographers to express themselves the most in terms of ID photography, because as you probably know, all passport and ID photos have very strict, there's very strict regulations in terms of what they look like. And it was important to me in this part of the project to show how the photographers, what is the level of their skills and what is the visual language they employ. And I wanted to group these photographs, and by going into the studios, always wearing the same shirt, no makeup, my hair down, I really wanted to see what the photographers could do with my image, and how they would replicate the different conventions of diploma photography. And so this was the moment when I first got in touch with the protagonist of today's presentation, Celina Osiecka, who is the author of this diploma photograph. The images from that project were shown anonymously. I did not say which picture was taken in which photography studio, because the photographers didn't know that they were part of this experiment. So I wanted to protect them in a way. But in the case of Celina Osiecka, it was obvious who made that picture, because or it was very easy to identify her. And so this prompted me to get in contact with Celina Osiecka immediately when the project was going to go public. And so Celina Osiecka is a Warsaw photographer. She was born in 1941. Maybe we can go to the next slide. Here she is in 1960s, photographed by her husband, and she, just a moment, here we are. So what drew me to her is the fact that she has been active in photography since late 1950s. She started her own studio in 1968, but received this very traditional training in photography at a time when photography in Poland was considered a craft. There was a guild, the Warsaw Photographers Guild, that she was a part of, a member. And what's interesting is that she, despite the fact that photography, throughout the more than 50 years of the activity of her studio, photography has underwent this huge revolution of becoming from going from a black and white analog medium into this digital, colorful tool which we now have. And what was very interesting to me is that Celina Osiecka sort of resisted that revolution, and she kept on working in the way that she was trained back in the 1950s, and she still works to this day. So this was an aspect of her story that immediately drew me to that place. Because of a business choice that she made very early on, working as a photographer, the choice to keep all the negatives of the photographs that were taken in her studio, the studio now contains, the studio is now an archive of thousands and thousands of portraits of Warsaw citizens taken from 1962 onwards. This really constitutes this abundant archive of the changing fashions, the changing conventions of photography, the lifestyle and also the personal stories of each of these people. And here, so first off, Celina Osiecka started her training by, she had this very traditional way of entering into the world of photography. So first off, in the 1950s, she started training at a photography studio run by master craftsman Alina Straszkiewicz, so another photographer woman. And she spent 3 years working there, really learning the basics of photography. And after that, in 1962, she was able to take an exam and become an apprentice. And that gave her the opportunity to start working more independently. She moved to another Warsaw studio, that of Lucjan Uziębło, and she stayed there for more than 5 years until she was able to gain her master craftsman or craftswoman title in the field of photography. And this coincided with a big change in her personal life, because in the year of 1967 she gave birth to her first daughter, Małgorzata. And so the image that we're looking at is actually an image of a self-portrait of Celina Osiecka. This was taken in her very first studio, which she launched in 1968 when she received her master diploma. And so this image became the cover for both the exhibition and the book. And I love this image because we can see Celina Osiecka here from her own perspective. We are almost standing behind her, behind the camera, and we can look at her reflection in this very new phase of her life. She's a newly minted mother and the owner of a photography business. So I really love this picture. Also because we can see elements of the decor of the studio, such as the photographs, her master diploma, but also the little wooden cabinet, which is probably a shoe cabinet, because this was a 2-room apartment, and 1 room in the apartment was the studio, and the rest was for the family's private house. And going back to the title of my presentation, A Good Profession for a Woman, that is actually a quote from Celina Osiecka. She is and was a very hardworking woman, but I think that something that really came up in our conversations is the fact that that photography turned out to be a good profession for her, and I tried to analyze that and tried to look at the different aspects of this for the purpose of this presentation. And I think that one of the elements is that photography allowed her to keep her work close to home. The first studio, since it was in her home, it was very convenient because she could work in 1 room and have her daughter with a nanny sitting in the next door, so she could attend her daughter in those early years of motherhood. And then once her daughter went to school, she finally moved the studio into an independent shop, which is the one that we see in this picture. And she also mentions how, this is really reminiscent of this work-life balance juggling that a lot of contemporary mothers have to, and parents have to deal with, because she organized her work around family life. So she would close the shop at a certain hour, pick her daughter up from school, take care of her for a couple of hours, and then she was able to come back to the studio and work in the darkroom in the late hours. So in that sense, I think the studio gave her an independence, but at the same time, it was flexible enough to for her to be able to do both things at the same time. And this is also in line with what Professor Agata Jakubowska says about the emancipation of women in Poland in the socialist era, because those early years after the war saw this very radical emancipation with women on tractors and women performing conventionally male professions, but this started to, this narrative kind of ran down around 1955, 1957, which is the time when Celina Osiecka was embarking on her path as a photographer. And suddenly this narrative changed, and the role of procreation and being a good mother resurfaced. And so this conventional gender roles came back. And this is the time when she was starting her career. So the studio is active till today. It hasn't changed much since mid 1970s. And this is Celina Osiecka at work today. If you ever are in Warsaw, then please pay her a visit. And as I mentioned, apart from the fact this true connection to the analog method, this attachment to the material quality of photography, and the fact that she works with analog photography, she uses pencil retouching to retouch her images, so there's really no digital tools involved. As I mentioned, what's fascinating is the archive that she holds in the studio. And these are boxes and boxes of negatives, all put in alphabetical order. And sometimes people do come back after years of not being in the studio, and they want to make another print of the photo, and she is able to find those names. So that is really fascinating. So that formed the base for the project, and that was the starting point for my work on the exhibition. So as you can see, one of the primary challenges was how to translate that mass of, that massive archive and that depth of the personal story into something more universal. So my idea for the show was to actually use the different categories or genres of photography that Celina Osiecka had used in her professional life. So this is a small presentation of the main categories that were used within the show. And through those categories, I tried to tell the story of Celina Osiecka, but also tell the story of the last 50 years of Warsaw professional photography. The central theme of the exhibition was obviously portrait photography, which is the main type of photography services that Celina Osiecka focused on. We had this tableau style of presentation, which was supposed to mimic the way in which the photographer displays her works in the shop window of her studio. But also, I have to say that Tyrone Simon's way of presentation is definitely an inspiration too. And so we showed original prints made. Prints made in the studio, as well as contemporary prints made out of the negatives that we pulled out from the archive. So that's why the squared ones are the contemporary. We really wanted to show that each photograph is also a testimony of an encounter between the photographer and the protagonist of the picture. So we picked out about 10 silhouettes and had these micro histories that gave more depth to the stories. Documentation photography, since Celina Osiecka's husband was an architect, they both and they lived very close to the studio. They kept on documenting the changing surroundings of the studio, so there was a lot of material to work with there. photography as a craft, I think that this will be interesting perhaps for some of you. I was able to show 2 portfolios that the photographer had prepared for her exams, for the apprentice exam and for the master craftsman exam. And it was a fascinating document to me because it goes to show what kind of skill was expected from someone in that at that time. We also had a vitrine dedicated to pencil retouching, which is a very old school technique, but somehow she's able to still use that. I think I've seen it in some slides from the 19th century yesterday. So it's a very old technique. And then event photography, because this was also a big part of the studio's work. And this is, I think, an important aspect of professional photography. The fact that for each of these protagonists of the picture, this is a very personal, very individual situation. But the photographer is in this dual role. It's on one hand, it's passive. It's just sort of how do you say that? Witness. It's being the witness of the situation, but on the other hand, it's being the director, the person who is actually the gatekeeper of the convention. So that was something interesting. When you put all these pictures together, you suddenly see that very clearly. And so the book, just very briefly, because I know my time is running out. The book that followed was an in-depth conversation with the photographer, and whenever Celina Osiecka would drop any names of people or institutions connected to the history of Warsaw professional photography, I would make a note of that, and there's a glossary of those names at the back of the book. We also were able to publish a short selection of portraits, because an important issue or question that I think a lot of us have to address in our work is the fact that we are showing images that were made with a certain intention, probably with the intention to be shown to mainly family members or private situations, and by pulling them out of that context and putting them on public display, we are changing that. And for obvious reasons, we were not able to contact all of the people who were shown in the exhibition, so we really had to have a conversation and decide on a set of good practices how we were going to address that. And we chose to do that by first off showing the images as a group and not picking individual images, not pulling them out and blowing them up, but just showing them as this collective archive. And then also we made the exhibition knowing that if anyone came up to us saying that they don't like their picture in the exhibition, we would immediately take it down and replace it. So those were the only tools that we had in that situation. In terms of the book, which is forever, we did have to have the written consent to have the printed photos, but I think that's a broader discussion to be had. And so with this, just one more note. I would like just to say that the future of this collection is, it's still open. I'm not sure what's Celina Osiecka is obviously active, but no decision has been made in terms of what's going to happen with the archive in the future. And I think that's also a big conversation, because the value that we attach to professional photography is definitely lower than we do compared to fine art photography, and I really hope that will change in time for us to take good care of this archive and find the funding to preserve it, digitize it, and keep it. Because I think it's just such a gem of national heritage. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much.